Hello and welcome, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. You probably know we're in the middle of our little miniature sex series here on this season. And so I'm bringing you Caitlin and Cole Zick this week. They're the leaders of Moral Revolution, and they have a story that I think is going to be really encouraging and inspirational. They met, I think it was Caitlin's senior year of high school, and started dating, got married, and they just came up against a lot of very unexpected things sexually within their marriage, and they are super backstagey. I mean, if I've ever had a backstagey couple on here, they are the most backstagey. I absolutely love them. They are so honest, they are so real, they are so vulnerable with their story and how they approached marriage from two completely different pasts, two completely different histories, how they came together and things did not go as expected, and what they did to really get on track sexually with each other and how they did it. So it's a really cool story. You're gonna love them and how honest they are. So enjoy Caitlin and Cole Zick. Hi, Caitlin and Cole.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing,
Hi.
Jamie?
Oh, I'm good. Chris said your media person's out with COVID.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
we got back just last night late too. So we were media people. I told Chris, you realize really quickly the media guy is actually the most important part of the ministry, not the leader of it. When
100%.
you're out with COVID.
100%. There's nothing. Yeah.
We can't function without him.
Literally. Oh my goodness. Yeah, they're so crucial to the process and everything involving with men in every part of ministry.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, especially now in these last 2 years since
Right.
we went primarily online, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk to you guys. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, we're excited.
It's so fun. I don't think I've ever interviewed a married couple yet. So this is really fun.
Nice.
I just wrapped up my last season, a little background on me, and then I'll start asking you all the questions. I just wrapped up my last season. And so this is going to be for the next season, but I want to do kind of like a little highlight on like sexual health.
Mm-hmm.
And like from a biblical, standpoint and everything, because I get that question more than any question and answer type situations or what people want to hear about. They want to hear about like sex and marriage.
Yeah.
Where am I talking to you from?
We're in Redding, California.
Okay. So is this an offshoot of Bethel, this ministry?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We love Bethel. I'm in Dallas.
Oh, okay.
We thought so. We saw some of our mutual friends. So I thought she might be in Dallas.
Really? Oh, that's fun. Okay. So who are some of our mutuals? I know Banning.
Okay. Yep. We just looked at your Instagram and, you see the friends that follow each other.
Yes.
It was Lindsay Berteau, Jeremy Donovan,
Yep.
Krista and Sean Smith.
Jeremy Donovan's one of my best friends.
Yeah, Jeremy was in our wedding. Yeah.
We've been close for a long time.
No.
Yeah,
Oh my
they've known
gosh.
each other since they were like 19.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to have to message him after this. That is a fun connection. Well, I want to dig into some of the background behind Moral Revolution, but just to start with, I'd love to get a picture, or just my listeners get a picture of y'all. How'd you meet? How, what? And I would love I've listened to a couple of your podcast, and I want to talk about just like healthy sexuality, sex inside marriage, when we have hang-ups sexually in marriage, because I think you speak so raw, and I call this backstage because I just like there's no time for fakers on here. And that's why I love how you approach these subjects. I love it. It's just so my heart. I'm like, why is the church so quiet?
Yes. Yeah. Basically, after people listen to us, they know more than they want to know about our sexual histories and our sex lives.
Well, you're about to get a new audience too. And anybody who's still with me on this podcast, they know what they're going to get with every episode.
Awesome.
But I'm so excited about this because, like I said, it's just such a need. And I just believe that the church has been way too quiet, way too long. And it's signed the Don't Have Sex Before Marriage pledge, get the purity ring, and then it'll all be good.
Yeah, not so.
Yeah, not so. And so I would love to hear just some of y'all's stories and then hear about your ministry and Moral Revolution and everything too.
Sounds great.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I was raised in the church. I knew I was called to be a pastor when I was like literally, no lie, 4 or 5 years old.
Wow.
My parents weren't pastors. My dad owns a construction company. My mom works with she's worked in medical her whole life. She's a medical records person. But
Wow.
Yeah, I'd wake up at like 6 a.m. and watch Gloria and Kenneth Copeland when I was 6 years old. Yeah, no lie.
Oh, that's awesome.
it's just, I remember being aware of the Holy Spirit, like actually tangibly feeling him and sensing him at like 7 or 8. And so I would say for me, the Lord, the Holy Spirit's always been in me and on me. And I never even had a season of my life where I wanted to have sex before marriage. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't like the church sold me a purity message that was a lie. I always knew who the Lord was, and that's all I really wanted to pursue. So that answer doesn't really probably help very many people. So, I found pornography as a kid many times, and every time literally would run out of the room, knew even at 8 years old, this isn't who I am. I don't look at this stuff.
Yeah.
Got into high school, got into college, plenty of opportunities with girls and, opportunities to, have sexual experiences. And every time just it was pretty easy to say no. So when I got married, Kate and I got married at 22, she was it. She's the only one I've ever seen naked, the only one I've ever been with in that way. I've never seen pornography, still to this day.
Wow.
So we've been married for 16 years. And, I would say this, when that message of purity and abstinence and choosing to wait until marriage is really accepted and believed in the heart of the individual, it's absolutely 100% right. Like in our 16 years of marriage, there's never been a moment where I thought, oh man, I wish I would have had sex, or I missed out, or I would be better at this had I done this, or if my past was different, or had I been sexually active in high school, I would have been more that's never been the case ever. But I would say that it was without a doubt my choice early on. I even in high school, my dad at one point told me, if you're doing some things, it's okay. It's natural for a boy, it wasn't, I don't feel like I was ever forced fed into it. Most people would look at my life and say I was sheltered. I grew up in a revival culture church. We were at church 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah. That's my husband's background as well. Yeah.
So my parents, definitely taught us the Lord, who the Lord was and the Holy Spirit, but, it always felt like my choice. It always felt like it's what I want. And there wasn't even a point when I got 19, 8, 20, 21, 22. There never was a moment where I thought, I need this season of my life to really figure out what I believe. I knew it. And honestly, my 16 years of marriage have only proved I was right. Like we've seen a ton of opportunity for health and growth because she's the only one.
Yeah.
And she'll get into that, when our 2 stories became one story, the intertwining of how my past impacted her past and vice versa, is pretty profound. And so we're constantly with Moral Revolution trying to figure out how to crack that code. How do we preach a purity message that is needed, that is biblical, that is right, that leads to health and wholeness and God's design, without it being legalistic, without it being feeling like it's bigotry, without it feeling like it's controlling, because I never felt controlled. And the freedom that I experienced, myself, to say, wait till you're married, it's the best way. It is the best way. There's no doubt about it. My life is proof of it. I wish there could be more people in my boat that could have experienced like I experienced it, so we could really study it psychologically.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt in my mind.
It is such a rare story. But it's now you're making it possible for everyone. So
yeah, trying.
It's so good. Yeah. It's so good. Let me backtrack there for a minute, Cole, because you like because my 2 kids, they're like my 8-year-old. I think that 9 is like pre-puberty, and so I've just been diving into all these things because I'm raising 2 boys, and they're finding out their peepees grow. They're finding out that these body parts, and there's not even sexualized yet. There's just their bodies are doing what their bodies are doing. And so I want to do my best, and I just have the same heart as like, I don't want to be shaming and guilty and, oh, that's gross, or, oh, sex, and I don't want that on them. Way too many people have that, but I also want them to grow up wanting to like honor women, honor their own bodies, and treat them in a biblical, godly way. And so looking back on your story, was there any moment in time or was there a situation, whether with God or with a person or your parents, where that became like, why the steadfastness? For how old were you when you got married?
22.
22. So for 22 years, there was a pretty steadfast, commitment to sexual purity. Can you dig down underneath it at all and have any? I'm just so curious.
Yeah, my parents didn't ever have a sex talk with us.
Okay.
So they kind of broke the rules we try to teach everybody. We're pretty.
Yeah.
We shout from the tops. Talk early and talk often with your kids. Forget about the talk. Early and often is the goal.
Great.
That's
great.
What my parents did really, really well, Jamie, and honestly, to this day, better than anybody I've ever seen, they taught us how to know who we are and not care what anybody else thought about who we are.
Wow.
My parents don't give a flying flip what anybody thinks, whether it's a pastor, whether it's they almost embarrassingly so at times when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like my parents just are not concerned with man's opinion of them.
Wow.
And they taught us that. And so, I grew up in a public school. I grew up with sex all around me, people talking about it. My friends would have weekend parties at cabins and it would be wild. And I just didn't go to them because I didn't want to go. I never had the struggle of asking my parents if I could go. I wouldn't have never wanted to be in that scenario.
Yeah.
My parents, that was the core message of my childhood. Know who the Lord is and know who you are. If you know those two things, they weren't really worried about what decision we would make when we were presented with alcohol. They weren't really worried about what decision we would make when a girl would want to go further than I was supposed to go. If you know who you are and you know who the Lord is, then that's going to be the core basis. And when I look back at my childhood, I would point to those two things.
Okay, that's great.
Everything was about knowing who you are in Christ, knowing who the Holy Spirit is, learning to listen to his voice.
Yeah.
And then you're going to make those healthy decisions in those moments. When I think of the times I said no to drinking, when I think of the times I said no to moments with girls where I could have, done whatever I wanted to do in those settings, it conflicted with my internal belief system about who I was. And so it would have never fit.
It wouldn't have fit with you.
It wouldn't have fit with the reinforcement of my identity that my parents taught me. And we try to teach that with our kids. I never had a sex talk with my parents. They didn't actually do that part well, even though they did a lot of other things well. But they taught us who we were. And they taught us who the Holy Spirit was. And that was the bedrock for every decision. That I'm one of 5. My siblings' stories are the same.
Really?
Honestly. Yeah. Wow. I mean, all 5 of us are living for the Lord. Wow. All 5 of us love the Lord. All 5 of us serve the church in the different ways that we are called to do it. We've all married God-loving, God-fearing people. Like we all love our spouses. All the in-laws are our best friends. It's a miracle in a lot of senses, but it's also a testament to identity.
It is. Wow, that's so good. I guess if they could have given you that identity versus one talk, you would have taken the identity 100 times over. Yeah,
absolutely, without a doubt.
Because that informs everything else.
Yeah. I mean, I say let's do both, but absolutely,
yes, absolutely.
Identity over the talk for sure.
Yeah. That's so good. Okay, so that's your background story. Now, Caitlin, can you tell me a little bit about yours, and then we'll talk about expectations going into marriage after that.
Yeah, definitely. So mine was pretty different. My parents had Catholic background, so it was very much like we were Irish and we were Catholic, and that's just part of who you are.
Yep,
so it wasn't necessarily a personal faith or a relationship with the Lord.
Right.
So by the time I found myself, interested in boys, it escalated super quickly with zero boundaries and really zero. I would say, I was raised by the culture. The culture completely informed all of my decisions around sexuality and relationships. And so 7th grade, first kiss escalated super quickly to feeling like this is just, I think if I could find one phrase of like what I believed as a young girl is just like, this is what everybody's doing. And this is what girls are supposed to do.
Yeah.
So even though I found myself in these scenarios pretty quickly where I wasn't actually enjoying myself nor feeling safe, feeling valued, or feeling, loved, it's just like, I thought this is part of it. Like this is part of, I think the only goal I had in the end is, power and popularity. And so that came with hookup culture. So, and really finding my worth from being wanted by guys. So 7th grade, first kiss escalated quickly to my Catholic school girl skirt, like his hands going up it during class when the lights went down for a presentation, feeling trapped and frozen, but thinking, oh, well, I kind of said yes. Like by means of me ever making out with him, it's like now I'm his. So really feeling objectified from a young age without having any language for that. So that relationship, if you want to call it that, ended quickly. By 8th grade, I had a new boyfriend. And that was definitely like my first very serious relationship where things escalated sexually very quickly as well. Just lots of oral sex and kind of, again, basing it off of peer pressure, what everybody's doing and what you're supposed to do. So by freshman year, we were still dating, found out he was a football player, found out he cheated on me with a cheerleader at an away game. And in this moment that, I have a terrible memory, the kind where you never remember where you park and you have to like keep using your key fob to find your car. But I feel like the Lord encapsulated this moment so that I could see how we are so deeply affected by culture and by what we listen to and what we watch. He's asking me to stay with him, like I won't do it again. And what made my decision in that moment was my vision of a powerful woman. And so not having biblical values or, any faith, it was around a commercial. It was this commercial of our day. If you're from my generation, you'll probably remember it. It was a Gatorade commercial. They've actually redone it recently, but it's, a famous male athlete and a famous female athlete. So it was Michael Jordan and Mia Hamm.
Oh, very
cool. They were taunting each other. Yeah. They were taunting each other back and forth, like on the court and the field. And it was like, anything you can do, I can do better. Anything you can do, I can do better. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was my mantra in the moment. That's what made my subconsciously made my decision of like, oh, that's what a powerful woman does. We just do it better. So I was like, sure, I'll stay with you. And then I just started cheating on him at every given chance. I was hooking up with a new guy every weekend, constantly going to parties. Back then we didn't have cell phones. We had pagers. So
I remember those days.
My pager was blowing up with booty calls. But I felt powerful. I felt in charge. I felt like this is what women do, So that was just a whole, I guess the quickest way to say that, it's like these moments of pressure, whether it was social pressure or legitimate pressure from a guy, these moments of pressure in, movie theaters, back seats, in between the sheets, these moments actually took me more years to get out of than it did to get into. Because that range was from, about 13, 14 to 16, I got radically saved. But those moments created trauma that I was completely unaware of, just believing the lies of the world. Looking back and realizing we are 100% trained by what we're entertained by. If you're listening today and you're a believer, you can check that with your desensitization to things today. Because it's like we slowly become desensitized by what we're listening to. But back then, it was all the songs I was singing was about, booty call, keep it on the down low, nobody has to know. Why do good girls like bad guys who tell mad lies? Like I was celebrating all of that. And that's who I became.
And that was what that's what power looked like.
That is what power looked like, which again, today, we could escalate that quickly with the lyrics and it's such a lie. It is so many lies that really destroyed so much of my internal world without knowing it while thinking that I was on top of the world.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. You're feeling the most powerful ever. Yes. And your inside is caving.
Yes. I remember when I first got saved thinking like I would hear people share their testimonies of like, I was like so messed up. Like I needed the Lord. Like I remember thinking I didn't need the Lord. I didn't need anything. I was killing it. I did not know.
You didn't feel broken.
No, I didn't feel broken. I thought this is the way you win.
Right.
And so it got to so much of a point where the group of girls I was in, we had a little journal where you'd go in and you'd write the guy's name and number like that you hooked up with. And it was like a competition. Like the longer the list, you were winning. And I'm extremely competitive to this day. And I was like, I will win this because I found my worth there. That is where my worth and my value is found. So when you fast forward to marriage and to realizing how many lies have been seeded in around my body, around being objectified, around trusting a man and trusting his intentions. Obviously, everybody just heard Cole's story. So it was it was a divine organization of the Lord for me, because I think he knew, like, I really needed that. I needed to trust that there was a possibility of a man who didn't just want me for my body, who wasn't just objectifying me. But I had a lot of unlearning and a lot of healing to do. My first encounter with a guy at youth group, which again, then I'm like, oh, first, like, this guy's great. He doesn't want to have sex. Like, wow, this is incredible. But he convinced me oral sex was okay. And so it was slow, that part was slow. The next guy at church still convinced me to do more. So that part was very slow. It was super healing. I actually met my husband when I was a senior in high school. So it was a super healing process. But so that part was pretty slow as far as like understanding actually biblical truths and what God said about purity and sexuality in my body. But the hatred for the lies of the enemy, it's almost like as soon as there could be a spotlight on a lie for me to know that was a lie, then I'm like, oh no, then that was fast of like, I will never, never settle for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it so weird? I always teach, we have like a college program and an internship. And I always tell them, like, because girls come in, get radically, just find Jesus radically. And I'm like, just because you meet a Christian doesn't mean he's a good guy. How did you get through that, Caitlin, with like, wait, you're Christians? And because it was such a black and white transformation, like get around like, wait, you're Christians and I'm still being objectified? Did that project on God at all? Or how did you kind of work through that? Because I think that's a lot of young people's experience that have your story.
That's really true. So it's funny. One of my friends who was a partier friend with me, but she had like Christian roots. And I was like having a conversation with her, kind of like judging her for having sex. Because at this point, my paradigm was, sexual intercourse is the only off limits thing,
Yes, sure.
And so I was like telling her this. I remember we're driving in a red Mustang and she goes, what? Like, you're doing this all the time, And it was this moment of like, oh, is that not okay? Like, I literally didn't know.
You didn't know.
No, I had no clue because I believed this guy.
Right.
So I think that pursuit. And then I started going to the Christian bookstore back in the day. I got every purity book possible. I'm like reading everything. I'm like, I don't know what to believe about this.
Yep.
So for me, it didn't project on God. There was a moment when I remember like a couple that was like always on stage at youth group and very like celebrated. When I found out they were having sex, I remember I almost left the church, which I think I would have left Christianity and God because I was so fresh.
Yep.
I almost left because I was just like, oh, these are hypocrites. This is not what I thought it was.
Yep.
So I think that was the one pivotal moment where I'm like, I could have lost it. I could have lost everything that I was starting to believe in.
Yep.
But I think the Lord really carried me through that. I took it to a leader. I talked it out. And like, ever since then, honestly, I've just been the person where I'm like, let's call stuff out. Like if there is sin, let's call sin. Let's get help. Let's get healing.
Right. So you guys meet. Was it just the typical high school in love romance? Just fall in love?
I don't know what the typical one would be, but we definitely
high on each other.
Yeah. I mean, I dated in high school a bit. I had a girlfriend that was most of high school. She told me she loved me. I said thank you. I was even pretty guarded with that word. I wasn't going to. Caitlin's the only one I've ever said that to.
Yeah.
I wasn't just giving that word away. I felt like our word covenants are huge. I love you being one of the biggest word covenants we don't realize we're making.
Yep.
And so, but I knew within a month I was going to marry her. Like I knew, and I wasn't the hopeless romantic. I didn't fall for every girl. Like I fell for her.
Yeah.
It was really quick and I knew she was it. And so, we went to her senior prom together. We dated for 3 years and we did school.
We did ministry school.
Yeah.
Cool.
Finished our ministry school and got married right after ministry school. And we've been in ministry and marriage and child rearing ever since.
Wow. All three together.
Yeah.
That's how it should be. That's good. So I love a part of the story that I'd love for you guys to share now is what, like, bringing back to like sexual expectations going in to marriage, especially if as Christians, you know, like outside Christianity, I don't know what, you know, but if as Christians, like we can, whether we come from Cole's background or yours, Caitlin's, you know, like we just go into marriage thinking certain things. I know I did, my husband did. And so I would love to hear the part of your story where things took a different turn than you expected.
Yeah. Obviously me having waited, I thought God owed me.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, Christians can be very entitled with our spirituality, especially when you look around and you,
so true.
well, I'm so much better than them. I mean, I deserve,
right.
you know, the I deserves are a dangerous place to live in your mind as a Christian, for sure.
We're so good at being little Pharisees.
Yeah, no doubt. I hate to admit it, but it's true. So I went into marriage, you know, especially the wedding night and the honeymoon. I think one of the things that we do is we put so much weight on sex on the honeymoon night and the wedding night and the honeymoon, which I did. You know, I was like, oh man, this is going to be unbelievable. This is going to be the greatest porn movie ever made. And I don't even know what that would be because I've never seen one, but you know, we're going to do that. And the reality of it wasn't, you know, we didn't have sex on our honeymoon. We tried. Caitlin had a lot of physical pain. We even called our pastor on our wedding night, like, hey, this isn't working. Things don't fit. Like, help us. What do we do? We need to talk. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. So, you know, I would say for me, it was a letdown in that sense. And I had to shift my perspective of understanding of what sex was. You know, even not having experienced sex, I thought sex was an orgasm. And so when I didn't get to experience that orgasm the way that I want, I definitely was let down. And the process of working through the pain showed me, wait a second, sex was never meant to be an orgasm, even though cultures minimized it to that.
Right.
Sex was meant to be a spiritual and emotional connection. For me, it was that personally, that was the, hey, so you've waited till you were married, but there's still more learning and you don't understand sexual connection yet. I'm going to teach it to you in this process. And that's really what I learned is how to be intimate in our lovemaking, how to have connection the way God designed it in our lovemaking. All I wanted was an orgasm on that night. There was not a thing in me that was thinking connect with Caitlin. I was thinking I deserve a really good orgasm because I waited, you know, and God showed me really quickly, man, that's such small thinking. If I'm just chasing an orgasm, that's a really small way to look at sex. And so God used the pain of our early years to teach me that.
That's so interesting. How would you define, and maybe actually I'll ask more details about intimacy versus just the sexual act later, but maybe Caitlin, you can speak really quick to your process once you got married, because physical pain is one thing, but then you have all the emotional stuff as well that I'm sure is like coming out from the past. How was that experience for you in the beginning? Did you have a disappointment? Did you have a letdown? Did you feel bad for him? Did you feel scared of, you know, like what was going through your mind when you found out, oh my gosh, like I don't like this?
Basically, the title for our first years of marriage were "There Are Actually Strings Attached," folks.
Yes.
Oh, that's so good. There actually are strings attached.
Yes.
It's so true.
So the first part of the physical, I can explain real quickly. So I actually hadn't had vaginal intercourse before. So, you know, even it's so funny because to think then the world would say I was a virgin, right? Like, but to know the layers of sexual pain and trauma that were still there. So the physical pain happened because I hadn't had intercourse, and I actually ended up finding out 5 years later after delivering my son that there was actually a physical issue there. So she had to remove extra tissue. So I had physical pain for like those first 4 to 5 years. So that was intense, and honestly has its own amount of layers to it because of just the rejection, the pain, the lack of pleasure, you know, the cringe up because you're about to go through pain. Like, so that was its own whole story. So once that got alleviated was when I actually had room to realize that there was emotional pain. So I would say because that was such a, predominant factor is this physical pain, I didn't even realize there was layers from my past yet. Because I was like, it just hurts. So of course I don't want to have it,
Right.
So
were you
that
open with Cole about that, or did you try and hide it, or were you? Did he know? I just want to help because I know so many women who have the pain, the physical pain as well.
Yep.
And so I just want to break it down.
Yeah,
how did you relate with him during this process?
No, that's great. I think it was so challenging. So, on the honeymoon, it felt impossible, literally. There were, we finally, weeks into marriage, got it to work. But I honestly, very practically, I would basically kind of hide my face in the pillow when, it was just so bad. Cause I'm like, I want to help and get him there. And I'm like, I just remember thinking we're not going to ever get this to change if I don't endure this for a while is what it felt like. It just felt like I'm going to have to endure until this stops. Finally went to a doctor saying something must be wrong with me. This isn't normal. Right. And it was an awful experience. She just looked at me and was like, oh, it's because you were a virgin when you got married. You should have had more sex.
Oh.
So zero hope, zero solution, zero answers. And so honestly, it was really hard because he felt bad initiating sex because it's he's asking me to go through pain. I didn't actually want to initiate sex. So it's I'd kind of muster up the I want this part of our lives. I want to do this. So, we made it happen, but it was very,
you wanted him to have it.
Yep.
And we talked a ton. We talked with each other. We talked with pastors. We would talk with anybody that would listen.
Yeah, we talked about it all the time.
I love that it's translating now to you guys still talking about it all the time. I love it.
Totally.
Now you're just doing it as a ministry. But but I keep hearing a theme with y'all too, which is you were always talking to people about it.
Oh yeah. We didn't
you
stop.
brought it out. You brought it out into the open. And so I think especially for women, we want to we want so desperately to please. We want so desperately to play the part of what we think culture wants us to play or that we should play. So we don't want to go to anybody and just be like, I hate sex, help me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep,
but you didn't. You put it all out there.
I told every friend.
Our senior, we caught our senior pastors at the time off guard one night. We asked them if we could go to dinner. They took us to P.F. Chang's and we said, we don't know how to have sex. We need help. It hurts. They were not ready for that conversation, I don't think.
Yeah. Over Mongolian beef.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so anyways, back to you, Caitlin. So you talked to him, you were honest about it, but you did feel the pressure of getting him through it sometimes.
Well, and we didn't understand it. Right. We didn't know why she had constant.
How is this not stopping?
The amount of pain she had, we didn't understand. Oh. So my heart was broken for her, and I actually got to a point in that season where I thought, well, maybe this is why I waited till I was married to have sex, because I'm not going to get to have a lot of it in marriage, and this is going to be the thorn in my side. I'm gonna. We were maybe having sex. There was probably a couple years where we had sex 6 times, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. We weren't counting. Yeah. But there was a couple years in there where it was really, really bad. But yet we always felt connected with each other.
Yeah.
There
probably because you were talking through the whole thing.
Yeah, we were talking through it. I also think because I was never addicted to an orgasm, when she was struggling with it, it made it easier to work through that for me. And so there was some rough periods there for sure.
Mm-hmm. So, it was a major game changer once I got the basically surgery.
Which was an accident.
Yeah,
you have to explain that.
Yeah, so it happened on accident because if you're a mother and you've had a child, you go to the doctor and spread your legs repeatedly when you're about to have a baby. So I'm like, how have they never seen anything wrong? But something about just the dilation of. Having a baby, the doctor was like, there's something wrong with you. And I was like, yes, there is something wrong with me. Yeah.
Oh,
so she's like, it would normally be a quick outpatient surgery. I can take care of it right now. I'm like, yes, please.
Oh, it was that quick.
Yep. Yeah. It was just a removal of some extra tissue.
Thank God for her. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. It was a big deal. So that was amazing. So after recovering, from the baby and having our first, intercourse that wasn't painful, it was incredible. Just being able to not experience pain. At this point, I still had never experienced pleasure, but it was just amazing to not have pain.
Wow. Yeah.
But that is when, once the pain was gone, so we were realizing, okay, if he initiates, I shouldn't feel nervous because of pain, but my body's still reacting that same way of feeling very tense, if he's just being kind and coming up
Yeah.
to me, with his hand on my shoulder while I'm washing the dishes, I'm thinking he wants something, or I'm thinking. And so we realized, oh, wow, this is not about physical pain. There is something else going on
Oh, wow.
here.
But you didn't realize that until the physical pain was gone.
Right. Because I just
it was all
attached
about the
all of it to the
physical
pain.
Okay, how interesting.
Yep.
And so then at this point, if he comes up and flirts or does something, you go somewhere emotionally that you didn't realize was there.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
wow.
So realizing that, like, I remember, one night, it's one of those moments you don't forget, a very marking moment where we're talking about it after just another like failed moment, and just Googling Christian sex therapist. Like, I need to get help. Like, I don't know what to do. And so that
I just
started
love that
the
you
journey.
never gave up.
Yeah, that's definitely in both of us for
Oh
sure.
my gosh. Who knows where, I mean, the perseverance to like, we will find an answer is so admirable.
Well, I would say, Kate gives us both credit because we're one flesh, but it was in Caitlin. Caitlin has this theme that she will never settle for less than God's best in any area of her life.
Including sex. Amen.
Including
yes,
sex.
good for you, girl.
Unfortunately, a lot of Christians give up on ever experiencing the fullness of it.
do.
And so, what we've found is a lot of people, and not to be overly stereotypical or create generalizations, but there's a lot of truth to this. The man wants it, the woman struggles with it, and the woman ends up figuring out a way to give it to the man because she gets other things. And it's a really broken picture. There's no intimacy in that.
Right.
And unfortunately, most people will settle for a lesser version of something if they can figure out how to justify it in their mind because they get what they want over here. And Caitlin Caitlin had to do the hardest work in our marriage to make this happen. It was we were both a part of it, but I didn't have to go through actually digging into the heartache of my own heart the way that she did. So she says we did both fight, but Caitlin's the one that did the heavy lifting for sure.
Yeah. So practically, Caitlin, I know you said like talking to people, you read all the books, you did all, and then now you're at the point where you're going to find a Christian sex therapist.
Yes.
Take me from there. Okay.
Yeah. So I go to the first appointment. We go together. She actually diagnosed me with PTSD, which I think now, trauma is a very hot word. I think everybody knows about it. But back then it was like, what? Like, I thought that's something like soldiers came back from war with. Like, I had no clue.
Right.
And so she said, yeah, you've definitely had trauma. And your body is reacting with stress every time something that would trigger it. So she said, we need you guys to have a reset. Like, you need a reset to where you guys need to like withhold from any intimacy, any physical interaction so that you can have a reset in this process while we work through some of this and heal it. So at the time we're both like, yeah, of course. Cole's thinking, great. Like, I can hold off more. It's not like we're having it a lot. Like, with hope on the other side that it's going to get better.
You'll do anything. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So then I started weekly counseling with her.
By yourself?
Okay. Yep. She's like, I just need to work with you.
We started together.
We started together, but then it was just me.
Okay.
Because she realized, she went straight to my childhood, actually realizing, I remember the first one, I'm like, I'm here to talk about sex. Why are we talking about how I was raised? But so I'm like, I love talking about all that because people think like, yeah, is this even the right route? Because she was addressing how I was raised with zero boundaries and actually like read off a list of kind of said all these things about what would sound like a personality or like a life paradigm. I'm like, yep, that's me. You just like read me like a book. And she handed me the sheet of paper and she was like, this is a person without boundaries.
Oh, wow.
So it helped me to understand too, even just why all my yeses were there with all these guys, even though everything internally was screaming no.
Yeah. Yep.
So she walked me through that. But then once we realized that, she actually gave words for, I think a lot of girls don't have these words for themselves. Like she's like, you were molested. Like at one point I was with, a 23-year-old man when I was 16 or these moments where I said no for 45 minutes, but felt trapped in the backseat of this car and like I couldn't leave. So she's like, you have trauma, you were abused, you were molested, you were taken advantage of. And so we did something called EMDR, which is.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, big fan of that, or brain spotting. And so it just helps the process quicker, like it helps it happen faster, get from our head to our heart. And so it ended up, we thought, what would be maybe a few weeks to a couple months. It ended up because of, actually, I had our second son during the process. So, just processing breastfeeding and can't really counsel and do EMDR during that.
No, yeah.
So it took a process of 18 months. So for 18 months inside of marriage, we had 0 sexual intimacy, 0 orgasm. So big deal. I think, again, back to where Cole's like, well, good thing I'm not addicted to orgasm. You know, he felt like it was an honor to be able to help me in that healing and that freedom journey. Yeah. So it was amazing. It was incredible. So it was so much work. It was awful. I would hope that she would cancel every Friday. I'm like, please, I don't want to do this.
So she got into you. I mean, she got into it with you.
Yep. It was very like supernatural. I definitely tell people like you cannot go to a non-believer when it comes to sexual stuff because it's so spirit involved. You know, it can't, well, not to mention, I don't know many sexologists or sex therapists that would have, and, you know, that don't have the biblical perspective, but so she helped me, you know, walk Jesus into movie theaters with me, like the moments of just forgiving people.
Yeah.
I still had dreams or nightmares with guys, you know, so it was just, I got freedom from all of that. Like it was completely gone. So that was incredible. Yep. It was a long journey, but after those 18 months, it was like I was a new person. I could view sex differently. She helped me realize a lot of practical things like, you can't watch
some of those. Yeah,
like you can't watch Law and Order every night. You know, like we used to watch SVU. She's like, because I'm like, I don't want to have sex after watching that. Like if you view sex through,
it's so practical.
Yes.
Well, and people don't tend to understand how our brains work. Our brains are actually designed to actively learn our lessons from what we watch and experience.
Right.
The human brain is designed like that more than any other species because we don't have the majority of our behaviors aren't instinctive.
That's right.
We have what's called learned behaviors, and our brains are worked like that, are created like that by design because it's required for a free will. Yeah. You can't have a free will with primarily instinctive behaviors. So if I could get into the science and psychology just for a second.
Please do. I love all this. Yeah.
The good side to this is that any habit can be fixed. Anything can be changed. And it's a part of our free will. The downside is we learn from everything, whether we realize it or not. And so when we watch a Criminal Minds or a Law and Order, again, not bad shows, we're not ripping on those. Caitlin didn't realize what was going on psychologically, but what was happening is her brain was naturally being trained by what she was being entertained by. And so without realizing it, her brain was saying that's sex. So that rape is sex. Well, I don't want to experience that with my husband. And so we as Christians have, we get in, you remember in the 90s, burn your CDs, bring everything. We're going to have a sin bonfire.
I burned so many things.
Totally. And those moments people have, good or bad feelings, whatever it is. But really what we didn't have the language for in the 90s was we're trained by what we're entertained by because our brains were designed to learn from our experiences and to adapt and to change and to take this experience and inform ourselves what to think or believe.
Great. Yep.
So the challenge in this culture right now is the sheer amount of sexual messaging that you get everywhere you go.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And the thing that we always say is control the controllables. There's a measure of it where you're not going to be able to control it, but you have to actually become aware of how your brain is subconsciously labeling messages. You've got to be able to label a mess and teach yourself to label a message. No, this contradicts God's design. It doesn't help reinforce my soul connection that I want to experience through sex. Since it doesn't, I've got to learn how to reject that and consume as little of that message as possible so that my brain can develop a godly belief system around sexuality. And I'm going to then reinforce godly perspective so that I can experience healthy sex in my marriage. People look at us kind of like sometimes we're prudes because we won't watch sex scenes in movies. I don't think it's a matter of salvation. I don't think it's me going to heaven or not going to heaven. I do believe that it's heaven on earth, though. I want to experience heaven on earth in every aspect. And I want to be best equipped to experience God's design for sex in my marriage. And the reality of it is watching sex scenes in movies doesn't help me create the base level belief system of what sex is in my heart and my mind. And it doesn't give me the best opportunity to connect with Caitlin that way. So I choose not to. I don't want to watch those things because it doesn't create what I want in my marriage.
Yeah. That's so good. I know. I always tell the girls, like, the Notebook, like, makes your first time having sex just look like the top of Everest,
Yeah.
orgasmic. And I'm like, it's not real.
No.
I think the Notebook is just as damaging sometimes emotionally as porn can be. You know what I mean?
Emotional
I
porn.
love it's a great story, all those things. But I'm like, it's literally, it gets in you.
Yeah.
These things get in you. So I love what you're saying too, because there has to be a level where we get to, that's what's more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what's more important here? A healthy, happy sexual marriage, or, and it might not be the same for everybody, like you say, but I really love that point. What were you saying, Kate?
I think it's just so important. I mean, all of us, whether you're listening and you're single or you're married, it's so important to look at what are the roots of your beliefs around sex. Because as a married Christian woman, I realized, okay, I'd cut out these shows, I've cut out music, and I live very purely. I'm very hardcore about what I watch and what I let in.
Yeah.
But you want to know what was a root is realizing, I still kind of believed that sex was a performance as the wife, because one of my beautiful, amazing friends would say, it was her last act of the night. Like, you care for the children, you work hard. Oh, got to go do the last act, of the. I'm like, that little thing that, is probably meant in jest, not a big deal.
Yeah.
But that is rooted to believing it's a performance, that it's not this intimate bonding. It is. I'm not putting on a show. I'm not saying how well I can perform.
Right.
I'm not just doing something just for him. Like, this is us, this intimate bonding, eye to eye, body to body, what God designed that nobody can separate. Like, it's such a powerful spiritual union.
Yeah.
And so we have to look at what are our beliefs about it. And most of us didn't have healthy sex talks.
Right.
Most of us still don't have any healthy sex conversations, even with friends or family or pastors. So all we're thinking about sex is what we're seeing, and we're bombarded on the daily with it. So a simple way I say it too is just realizing the truth about sex is so foreign and the lies about sex are so familiar. So we have to be intentional as believers to turn up the truth. Like,
that is so
if you're
good.
married, you have to not only cut out the lies, but you have to turn up the truth. So for any married women listening or soon to be married, Intimate Issues is a book. It was the first book my counselor gave me. It is the number one practical help I can give women. It is what I called it, like Christian Cosmo. I was like, I put it on my bedside and I would read it, and it would make me want to have sex, because I was like, this is what God gave us. It's what fired me up to do what Cole said, whereas like, I will not let the enemy have this. Like, this is what God designed it for. He designed it for bonding, for comfort, for connection, for, all the things, pleasure, procreation, all of it. But I'm like, that's what I'm going to have. And nothing is going to take that from our marriage.
That's incredible. And how did you feel most supported by Cole while you're going through these 18 months? Because I know a lot of couples that just resign to, she hates it, she does the favors, he gets it like twice a month maybe, and this is just kind of how it is, because they don't have the drive maybe that you had to do the counseling, to talk to the pastors, to read the books, to all these things. And so how did you, if for like godly men listening who are kind of struggling with a wife who really doesn't enjoy sex or has things attached to sex, how did he support you best? Like, how did he make you feel the most safe?
Yeah. I mean, he was very, very patient with me. He was very encouraging. He was very thankful. Thankful that I was doing the work. Thankfully we didn't have this like you versus me feel. It felt very much like he was in it with me. I think just on myself, I would put this like, even most recently, I would say, 3 years ago, there was still something in our sex life that I was like, I'm seeing red flags here. Like, this thing that I don't like in the bedroom. So here we are, we're having great sex. We're having it all the time. I'm having orgasms, but there's something in the bedroom I don't like. And when I realized, that's from my past. Like, that's why I don't like that. I was like, I refuse to settle, to say, I'm just never going to like that again because of my past.
Really?
Oh yeah. I went after it. So we went back to counseling.
You are amazing. I am loving you, Kaylin. Oh my gosh. So you're just like determined to go like this thing.
Oh yeah. Cause I'm like, this is stupid. I don't like him doing this to me because it reminds me of other people doing it to me.
So you're going to go take care of business.
Yes.
So what'd you do? You went to counseling?
Well, I mean, the ugly part of that is I remember Cole holding me while I'm crying and saying, like, is it always going to be like this? Like, am I always going to have something that I have to go after?
Right.
And is it always going to be this brokenness that never stops?
Oh.
And so there's the ugly part of it.
Yeah, that's
the
real.
The beautiful part of it is, then I tell him, I confess it to him, like, this is definitely from the past. This isn't just preference,
Yep.
So then I tell the next people, which is my small group, I bring it up. I say, I don't like this XYZ to happen because of X, Y, and Z reasons. I need help. And, they prayed for me. They encouraged me. My friend pointed me to a counselor, went to counseling. The counselor actually at the time, which it was probably wisdom. And, I have the fighter spirit that she probably was like, well, hey, relax for a little bit and just enjoy your orgasms.
Right.
She's like, why don't you first figure that out? And so she, we paused and didn't do it. But then, actually, last year, I was at another roundtable. It was actually for all senior pastor women with Lisa Bevere. And we were at her house and we're talking about, hey, what's something in your marriage that you want to pray for? So there I go again. I'm like, well, I don't like X, Y, and Z in the bedroom. And I can't overcome that.
And Lisa in the room Lisa's the only one she had ever met before that weekend. Every other woman, they were all pastors' wives or pastors, and well-known pastors and influential pastors that she just met 48 hours prior.
Yep. I mean, probably 5 hours prior.
And Caitlin just drops that bomb in the room.
Oh my gosh, you're so my kind of girl. I just cannot. This is just so great because you're not going to settle and you'll do whatever it takes. You will do whatever it takes.
How did you?
I want to hear the rest of the story too, but I want to go back to something you said. You said I knew it was an issue, not preference.
Yeah. Well,
did you distinguish those two things? Because some women just might not like oral sex. Some women might not like, spankings. Some women might not, most don't.
Yes.
Some women might not like. So how did you know, okay, this isn't just me preferring not something. This is being informed by the past.
Yeah, because it's a moment I could almost take myself back to moments of this is I protect this part of me because I could remember driving in the backseat of a car or, riding in the backseat of the car and this happening to me or a movie theater and this happening to me.
Yep.
Do you want to know what it is, Jamie, or is that too much for your podcast? Because she will share it.
Okay, I share it all the time.
We're sharing it for your sake.
You shared it with Lisa Bevere. Oh, guys, you can tell me. And no. This is so. I'll put a child warning on this.
Yeah.
Episode.
Don't.
No. Yeah, tell the people what it is.
I didn't like my vagina to be touched.
Okay, with fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Because it felt like, oh gosh, don't go there, because that's all I knew from such a young age. So, my first experience that happening in a classroom. So it felt like, no, we don't do that. This is no. But yet I had always said yes. And I always kept going. And so it's the same feelings were coming up of no. But okay, I'll let you.
Okay. And this was when you were already doing well sexually.
Oh, yeah.
So
because, I was orgasming sexually.
Right.
Yeah.
There was just
I
this
was
one
loving
thing.
it.
Okay. That helped. Okay. So that's how you distinguish it. It brought up memories.
Yep.
Things came to your mind. So you dropped this bomb on the ladies' luncheon. And what happened?
Yes. Literally around the table.
From there?
Well, Lisa's
everybody
jaw
fell in love
dropped.
with you in that moment. I guarantee
I think
you.
so.
Or all the real ones anyway.
Yeah. Some might have felt threatened. But okay. So Lisa's jaw dropped because she's like, what? I don't get it, and I'm like, Lisa, because she knew a lot of my story, but she didn't know this part, obviously. So what was really powerful was, she talks in the moment, because I just said, I was like, hey, I probably need to go back to counseling for it, but, it just feels so heavy. So, they gave some advice, wisdom, love, kind of, we're eating lunch, let's finish our lunch, So that's where that ended. But what was so powerful was later that evening, we had just a moment of worship and prayer in her home. And she kind of went around, just laid hands and praying for everybody. It was just an individual moment. But when she came to me, it was this uproar of from the top of her head to the bottom of her toes, you're not going to hold this over her enemy.
Oh, wow.
Kind of everybody joined. It was just this uproar. It felt like just a battle cry, just one of those moments that you're like, Holy Spirit. And this is so TMI for the guys listening, but what was so cool is that was that night we prayed, you cry, you're just okay, believing for it. But also for me, I think very tender to knowing yeah, right. Like this took me 18 months to overcome this kind of stuff last time. Like this isn't just like overnight going to change.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, I was full of faith. So got home from the flight the next day, midnight, get back from the airport, get home, and I'm like, I'm testing this out.
You're like, touch my vagina.
Well, what was beautiful was I said nothing. I said nothing
really?
because because I was kind of like, I didn't want to have the mental, like thing, like where we're like really doing it. So honestly, it just feels like it was all the Lord because he knew not to normally try that.
Right.
But it was just the Lord. It happened very organically and it was amazing. And he's like, what's happening? I'm like, wait till I tell you what's happening. So texted all the women that night. You'll never believe what just happened. So it was just one of those like God moments where you're like, I'm going to keep fighting, keep believing. But most of all, I just freaking hate the devil. So I'm like, he's not going to steal from
taking my vagina.
Yeah, he's not taking I love that he's yes. Normally I'm like, he's not stealing from my present because of my past, right?
Yes.
Like it's I refuse to let that in any area,
good.
but also in that area.
You know what? Part of your story too that I love is that you did the practical work with the therapist and you did the spiritual work with the ladies group and warring. And I think so oftentimes we go so spiritual and nobody ever calls somebody or books an appointment, or we go so practical and we just lose faith that God can do things too.
Yeah.
And
that's so
I
true.
love that you have both of those experiences and that both of them got you to where you are now. That is so amazing. So going back to the 18 months, when did your therapist really know, like, okay, you're ready?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I don't know if I remember.
Just
like,
for people
what
listening,
was telling.
what are the cues where it was like, okay, like I think it's time to have sex again. Like I think I'm healed. Or did she see something in you? Did you feel an urge? Like how did that manifest?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't know if I can remember like what it felt like or what happened. I just remember I viewed sex differently. I made the practical changes of what was coming in. I read, honestly, that book was a huge part because so much happens in the counseling session, but then that book was like a further like, when you read something yourself, it's almost like this own ownership where you're like, I'm taking that.
Yep.
So I think that had helped a ton. We went through all of the most triggering moments. I wasn't having dreams or nightmares.
Wow. Okay.
I felt like a different, one of the biggest moments she walked me out of, and this one was probably more of like a sozo type inner healing moment. She had me revisit like these most painful moments. Yeah. And, she asked me how old I was in one of them. She asked me to picture a girl that I knew currently that was that age. And she said, put her in that chair. What would you tell her?
Oh, wow.
Yep. And so it was these moments where like I legitimately felt like a different person because I didn't hold myself in a certain place anymore.
Wow.
I just had a completely different shift and paradigm about all of it. Like it's almost like I replaced all of the lies, all of the trauma, all of the beliefs about it. And like it was like a clean slate to then address what does God say about it, take all of that in and just try to experience that purely without all of the past strings. So a lot of breaking the soul ties too and renouncing stuff. And letting myself off the hook. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a moment where she said, hey, I think we're good. I think you're good. And we literally set up a sex retreat.
Oh yeah, we did.
To Napa.
I
don't remember. I thought I'd say that to jog your memory. Like, if you can remember why she felt like,
no, I don't remember.
There was a moment where she said,
I think you're ready.
Hey, I think you're ready.
Wow,
it wasn't just a soft launch, so to speak.
Yeah.
It was a hard launch.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Hard launch. Yep.
I love it so much. Oh my gosh. You guys, I feel like we could talk for hours. I know we've been going like an hour, so I will let you go soon. But like just to where you are now, like so there's well actually really quick first, Cole. So for men, really having a difficult time with being married to women who don't want it and don't like it and who are like, I remember a guy talked to my husband one time and he was like, I shower 2 times a day. Like he was literally doing everything to try and like be appealing. sexually, he's like, maybe I stink, maybe I don't, can you tell me where these body parts, like, am I doing something wrong? This is what normally happens. And she still she couldn't break through, So for men like dealing with that who really love their wives, but they know that they're hung up or just can't quite get there right now, what would you say to them? How do you best what did Caitlin do to help involve you in the process? And what would you say to them and how to love their wives through that?
Yeah, I mean, Caitlin did a really good job of just communicating why she felt how she felt.
Yeah.
And even with her good communication, there were definitely still moments where I was like, man, is there something wrong with me?
Right.
And
sure.
then in really low moments, you're like, man, I had all kinds of women that thought I was attractive and girls that thought I was attractive before
real.
Caitlin.
Yep.
I bet I can go find someone that thinks I'm attractive if she doesn't. You definitely have those moments. I personally was never tempted into porn, but that wasn't my past. I know a lot of men, that's a temptation and an almost acceptable outlet for guys. Even Christian men have accepted that as, well, this is how I get through this.
Yep.
And so the thing that guided me, Jamie, was it's Galatians, or is it Ephesians?
Ephesians 5.
Yeah, Ephesians 5, where his instruction to men are, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, giving himself up for her. That scripture was my guiding light, where I had to allow the Lord to teach me what it meant to be a husband, the way that the Bible describes being a husband. Okay, right. So if I am to be to her as Christ is to the church, what was Christ to the church? He was the sacrificial lamb. Mm-hmm. He was willing to give up anything and everything to give the church the opportunity to heal.
Right.
So if I'm supposed to be to her what he was to me, I have to be willing to give up anything and everything to give her the opportunity to heal.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so that shifts. I think a lot of times we want the quick, easy fix. How can I get sex quicker? How can it be better? All that stuff. I would actually just encourage the men, remember that you are supposed to give up anything and everything to give her the opportunity to heal. Because that's what, that's one of the myriad of things that Jesus did for us. Okay. And if I'm to be to her who Christ is to me, I really began to look at it like, during that 18 months, I mean, Jesus died on the cross so I could heal.
Yeah.
If I have to give up sex for a season so she can heal, I still don't get to brag about my sacrifice because it doesn't even come close to what he did.
Right.
I'm in my most sacrificial moment, it still pales in comparison to the sacrifice that he made.
Right.
And so
that's your mentality in it. That was what got you through that.
That was probably the only thing that got me through that.
Right. Yeah.
Is saying, okay, and then that guides everything. That becomes my narrative. That becomes my lens. And so now my framework is built on that. Okay, I'm frustrated tonight that I'm not getting to have sex. I really feel sexually frustrated.
Yep.
Instead of blaming Caitlin, I'm checking my thought process today. Did I lust all day long? And am I feeling sexually frustrated because my mind wandered? Yeah. Every room I walked into, my mind wandered with every woman that was in the room.
Yep.
Okay. I'm now checking myself through a different version of, rather than blaming Caitlin's past as the problem for our situation, I'm now saying, am I giving to her the love that Jesus gave me? Right. And am I setting myself up to be able to give that love? Or did I make it really hard on myself today by letting my mind wander in a way that my mind shouldn't wander all day long?
Right.
Did I really equip myself to be the loving picture of Jesus to her that God called me to be? And that paradigm was really important. I would say that paradigm was the reason I was able to walk through the really hard season of our marriage to be what she needed.
Yeah.
Because it changed the way I viewed every moment. Every time I got rejected by her, every time we couldn't when I wanted to, I'm not just referring to those 18 months, even in those 18 months, I never attempted to do anything with her, but still before and after there were still moments. Right. And so, I just kind of changed what I thought my role was in our marriage. I realized, okay, what does the Bible say my role is? Not what do other Christians say, not what do other men say, what do other people say.
Yep.
What has God actually called me to in this marriage?
Yep.
And then I realized really quickly as I dove into the Word of God, like, holy smokes, my calling is pretty significant. I'm supposed to be the picture of Jesus Christ in this marriage.
Yeah.
Wow, that shifts what I'm going after.
Yeah. That's so, so good. Man, you guys. And so you started having sex and it went great, I'm guessing.
Eventually.
Yeah. Okay, so so it was a slow process there.
Yeah, it was just like, so after first having that little surgery, it was like, oh wow, we can have sex. It doesn't hurt. That's great.
Yep.
And then now it's like, okay, I can have sex and just look at you and think about you and enjoy it, be present in the moment,
and
not
we
be
found
fearful.
things that you kind of liked. But Caitlin didn't have an orgasm still for a few years.
So like it was year 10 into marriage, 10 or 11th that I had my first orgasm.
Wow.
But now I've had one every time.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. She can't stop.
I can't stop.
No, she can't stop orgasm.
Well, once we realized she could have an orgasm too, we would never have sex without, I mean, there's very rare moments, I should say, that I don't want to do it without her getting the same enjoyment that I'm getting. It's not even just that she gets it every time. We work for that. Like we're not there to just for me to be satisfied. We're there for us both to experience that. But I mean, after counseling, I think we went 4 years without her having an orgasm where we were still trying to figure that piece out and trying out how to get there and what to do.
Being willing to try, just different things.
And then one night she got an orgasm and she's had one every time ever since. I mean, it
just broke.
Pretty wild. Yeah, it just broke. So it was year 10 or 11. It was actually year 11.
Yeah.
We're almost at 16. So the last 5 have been the fireworks I thought we would have on the wedding night. The first 11 were trial and error and healing and not settling for less than God's best.
Yeah. So good. And that's why sex and marriage is so amazing. Because you can say that 15 years later, 16 years later, like now it's the fireworks.
Yep, definitely.
That's the whole point of it, is the growing, the learning, the understanding, the trying, the learning to be Jesus to each other. It's just, y'all have such a beautiful story. And I really appreciate you sharing it. Oh my goodness. As far as one more thing, Kate, I keep saying one more thing. This will be my last thing. Because I know a lot of women who don't like orgasming. It makes them feel bad. Like they don't like the feeling of it. And some women who feel like they can't either. Is there anything practically that you would say to kind of help open that up besides what you've already said with the counseling and do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, for me, it was just, again, not giving up, right?
Yep,
like trying new things.
Yep. Like sexually new things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Meaning just so because of the painful years, it's like, I was like, here's the one position we can do that is least painful. And I just kind of try to do it.
Yep.
So breaking out of that mindset, being willing to just try different positions. Like literally, we don't do anything crazy, to be honest. So it's like literally just like the way I moved my legs or the way I positioned my body. Like I used to just realize I was so like uptight about it all.
Yep.
So being open-minded that way. And then honestly, I would recommend like the book I mentioned, Intimate Issues, was really great. We have podcasts on ours with Dr. Glenn and Phyllis Hill. He's a Christian sexologist. I highly recommend listening to that. One of them's called Becoming Sexual Friends. I'm like, that one alone, like it's just, I think it's a mental shift first to saying like, oh, I can get there. I want to do this. I'm not going to give up till I do.
Right.
And then I do have other friends, that it's like they tried for years and years, and it's just not giving up and seeing what works.
That's so good. And so Moral Revolution now, can you give me a little bit about that and we'll close? But I want everybody to know where to find you, how to find you, what it is.
Yes. So moralrevolution.com. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all those things. We have a podcast. We have the YouTube channel. We have like hundreds and hundreds of free blogs. We have courses. So it started as a book and a conversation, purity for high schoolers, but we've expanded it to be like, hello, there's way more holistic conversations to purity, to sexuality. So we speak to also, yes, high schoolers, young adults, but really into marriages, saying like, let's celebrate God's design for sex. Let's have good sex.
Yes.
Let's stop letting the world, dominate the conversation of this is what sex is, and say, let's celebrate good sex inside of church and inside of marriage. So it's really pretty all encompassing around all things sexuality.
Amazing. All right. Well, I love you guys. I hope one day we can all grab dinner.
Yeah, we would love that.
Bring my husband. You guys are so fun. We'll invite Jeremy and Annie too.
Yep, we would love
Well,
that.
I'm sorry you didn't come to Dallas, but I'm happy for California that they get you, because what you're saying is needed. What you're saying is so good. And hopefully there is so much hope that spews out as people listen to this, for men and women going through these things. Like, God wants us to have good sex. The devil doesn't get our vaginas. Let's go. Let's go get it.
I love it.